Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to make a video on 6 reasons why you may not want to purchase a cheap instrument when it comes to electric guitar. And stick around till the end of the video where I'll give my recommendations and assessment of the different price categories that electric guitars come in. So let's start with the first reason, and in my mind probably the most important, and this relates to the journey of playing an instrument. If you actually stick with it, it'll probably take a significant portion of your life, and you'll probably be quite dedicated to it, and you'll want to be quite good at it, and you'll want to progress in music and with your instrument. It's also not something that you necessarily need in your life, it's more like something that you want. So when making a decision about spending money on this kind of object, it differs quite a bit from traditional spending, such as a computer, for example, or a car or something like that. You may need or not need a car, and once you get a car, for example, you probably always want to have one. So if you buy a bad car to begin with, you'll just make better decisions next time. But when it comes to a hobby, and especially with instruments, the first choice you make may actually change the way your relationship with music and with that said instrument, not specifically that unit, but that instrument in general, how that plays out. And so taking on that perspective that this purchase is actually an investment into your journey, potentially lifelong journey with music, it kind of brings around a slightly different thinking, and it will feed back into several points in this video. But the first point is inspiration to pick up your instrument and play. So if you don't like the way your instrument plays, or the way your instrument looks, or it doesn't facilitate, with its quality, it doesn't facilitate your progress very well, and overall just feels like a cheap piece of trash kind of in your room, then you're just that less likely to pick it up and actually play. And that's probably one of the most important things about an instrument, how much you actually pick it up and play it. More important than anything else, I would say. And of course, that instrument being good looking, expensive, and good feeling is not going to carry you, it's not going to carry your motivation on its own to play it, but it will play a part. And so that is an important aspect. So the second point feeds off of the first one, and that's about your investment, right? So if you buy something expensive, you're again that much more likely to stick with it because you feel like you've spent money on it, you've invested in this, now you got to stick with it. And again, it's not going to carry you on its own, it's not going to carry your motivation on its own, but it will play a part, just like the first point. All right, so that's the investment and inspiration points out of the way. And in the next points, I'd like to look at the actual quality of the instrument and how it affects your journey. And so the third point here is that a lower quality instrument will actually hinder your progress with the instrument, and that it could make it quite frustrating, right? Because again, the journey with the instrument is long, and there'll be often times when you're frustrated with your progress or you're not seeing enough progress, and you really don't need hindrances on your way. And a lower quality instrument can be that hindrance, usually in the form of things like tuning stability issues or bridge quality, especially if it's a floating bridge and you want to make use of it and use it in your artistic expression. And especially, I think the biggest problems are usually with the fretboard quality in terms of the fingerboard and neck quality in terms of the action, or just the quality of the frets. And again, if the instrument doesn't feel good or comfortable for you to play, if it's actually a barrier to you learning the instrument, you're just that much less likely to keep on going with it and keep persisting and progressing. And the fourth point is a direct consequence of that, and that is the fact that a cheaper instrument will require some setup to make sure that it is not a hindrance to you, essentially. And so you're either going to have to pay somebody or do some research on your own and do these things on your own. It could be some part replacements or adjustment of the instrument. If you're handy and you want to put in the time, that should be absolutely fine. And you can definitely take an instrument to a much higher level just by doing some adjustments and spending a few bucks here and there. Right, so on to the fifth point, and this one's a bit more minor, at least for me, and that is generally the fact that lower priced instruments do not typically have finishes, or sometimes, a lot of times, they don't have finishes that are going to last. So they're not going to have like a thick layer of finish on them, for example, or they're going to use some cheaper materials, and essentially they're going to wear and scratch and dent a lot more easily, especially if you buy like the wood texture instruments. Usually the cheapest instruments have just a coat of paint and then a few layers of some kind of oil finish that is not very protective for the body, and you can scratch it like literally with your nail. And this feeds back again that, you know, if your instrument gets beat up over just a few weeks or a couple of months, it's just not going to look that great or feel like that nice of an item for you to pick up and play. So that feeds into the last point, number 6, which is longevity, and not just about the looks of the instrument, but its overall longevity. And again, if you think about your journey in music, right, hopefully a lifelong journey, and that's really what it should be, because if you want to just do music for a week, for a few hours, for a few months, for a year, and then quit, then it's kind of a waste of time, right? Because you're not going to get very far, you're not going to get very much satisfaction out of it, because you're not going to get that good in a short period of time. So really you're hoping to stick with it for years, if not your whole life. And therefore, the longevity of the instrument really comes into play. I wouldn't say that this is a crucial point, but it's something that I realized that's quite nice about the first instrument that I bought, which is, well, let me show it to you actually. It's right here. It is this Jackson right here, and it has a few dinks on it. And this was made back when the instruments were pretty good for the price. I think quality has overall gone down now, or maybe due to inflation, you know, prices have risen, and therefore, like, this was £500 when I bought it in 2010, I think, my first guitar, and this is absolutely still an incredible instrument to play, and I love playing it, and I love having it, and I love how it looks, and it's just dear to me, you know. So if instead of this I bought a much cheaper instrument, it would just kind of feel like a piece of junk that I wouldn't really connect with. Maybe I would have given it away to a friend, or it would just be gathering dust somewhere, and so, or just thrown away or something. And it's really, really nice to have that connection back to your first instrument, and it's still a quality instrument, because these will last you, you know, as long as you kind of take a tiny bit of care of them, especially if they're quality instruments. So I think that's pretty important to think about. All right, so let's get into the recommendations part, and just a disclaimer, there are exceptions to everything. You know, take my advice with a grain of salt. Obviously, if you find a really good reviews from people that you trust, especially if several reviewers, creators are, you know, having positive feedback about an instrument, then absolutely go for it, or if a friend recommends it to you or something. But as a general guidelines, just want to give you some things that I've noticed about particular price bands of guitars. One brand that I will say I've noticed regularly punches above its weight class in terms of quality for price is Ibanez, as an example. But again, please do check out reviews for specific instruments if you go with anything. And in terms of these price brackets, really bass guitars, if you're looking at bass, they generally tend to be better quality instruments for the same price in terms of your experience with it. It might be the same quality, but it's just that because on bass guitar everything is bigger, the tolerances and, you know, the leeway you have with the construction is a little bit greater as well. So smaller differences will eventually make less of a difference basically to you. So your experience will be better at a lower price bracket, I would say. And to support both of those points, over here I've got an Ibanez Geo bass. I think it costs 200 or 250 pounds or something like that. And it's a really nice instrument. It sounds good. It feels really good. I have absolutely no problems with it. The only thing is that, again, it comes back to the finish. It's, let me just show you real quick. It's again one of those woods with a small coat of oil on it, and it's got quite a few dings, even though I haven't played it that much. I think it's just from my hand sitting on it, even though, again, I don't play it that much. But still, a great instrument. So let's get into the price brackets. And the first one is going to be instruments around the 200 pound range. Sometimes you find guitars for like 100 and something pounds or 200 and something pounds, up to like 300-ish, which is kind of the next price bracket. And I would generally not recommend anyone to buy these guitars for primary use. If you just want to buy a shape that you're interested in, or just for fun or something, then sure. But or again, if you find that exception, then go ahead. But generally, I wouldn't recommend these, and they would definitely require setup just to bring them to a level where you can start to learn or progress or play all right on it. So the next price bracket is the around three to 400 pounds range, or dollars. I think it's pretty much equivalent nowadays. Not in terms of conversion rate, but in terms of how much products cost. Like, for example, my camera body costs 2,000 pounds and it costs $2,000, which is bullshit, but hey, that's how it is. Anyway, coming back to it. So the 300 to 400 pound or dollar range, you're looking at instruments that nowadays, right? Because I've recently bought two of these. This Jackson right here, which let me just show you real quick, because I have just dented it. No, not really. I've refinished it, as you can see. Pretty proud of this job, and if you want to see the video of how I've done that, do check it out over there. But yeah, I've upgraded all of the hardware, the pickups, and I've done a refinish. And it looks pretty cool, but like this instrument cost me 300 pounds, and there's another guitar in the same Jackson series, which is also 300 pounds, that I own. And these are recent instruments, right? These are from like more recent years, not from 10 to 12 years ago, which is my first Jackson. And the thing that I've noticed is the fact that these instruments are almost there in terms of playability, and you can definitely, you know, with a bit of elbow grease, you can definitely set these instruments up to be, to facilitate your progress. But again, you have to be willing to put in the time for the research and actually doing the thing, and you have to be a little bit handy, especially if you're going to replace some parts. But these instruments can get there. Again, I wouldn't recommend to buy this. Of course, let me take it back a little bit, right? If you're limited on money and the only guitar you can buy is a $150 guitar or no guitar at all, and you really want to play, definitely go for it, right? Having something that you can progress with 100 times better, infinite times better than not having anything. But if you do have a choice, I would recommend, you know, to steer towards something that will really, you know, grow with you, facilitate your progress, not hinder you, and you'll feel like picking it up. And again, it comes back to the same point here with the 300 to 400 pound or dollar range, that if you're not going to adjust it, it is again going to be an instrument. It's likely to be an instrument that is not going to grow with you very well, and it is going to make it harder for you to progress, right? And this is more applicable even to more beginner players, because you don't know what is hindering you or the fact that you're being hindered. More advanced players will know that. And so, yeah, that is kind of important. But if you can set it up, $300 to $400 guitars will work well for you. So the next price range is the like $500, $600, $700 pound guitars. And these instruments are generally good instruments. I think that's kind of what my older Jackson would cost at the moment. Again, a setup, by the way, regardless of price range, setup will always make the instrument better. But just the further to the low range you go, the closer to the lowest range you go, the further out kind of the setup is going to be, and the more it's going to hinder you without even more setup than the higher range guitars. And pro tip here for this range is, do try to find one, if you can, with specialized branded hardware, right? So like, for example, Goto, tuners, bridge, and especially pickups. If you can get one with like EMGs or Seymour Duncans or one of these named specialized brands for pickups, rather than, for example, Jackson pickups and a Jackson guitar, that will be really good for you. And beyond that, we have the instruments in the like 900, 1000 and further on range. And I would say generally, you know, I've got two guitars like that, and one of them is $950 or something, the other one is $1150. And I would say that these instruments are definitely reliable. They will grow with you, they will facilitate your progress, and they are, you know, they're just reliable practice and performance tools. That is not to say though that they do not require setup. Again, guitars also, because they're shipped worldwide, they're stored for long periods of time, and they're made out of wood. You'll probably have heard this a bunch of times, but the setup will vary basically. So I'm pretty sure that even if you order a custom shop guitar, it will likely require some setup, right? So you can't really get away from it, and I would encourage everyone to learn how to do that. But with the more expensive guitars, you can take more time before you put time into that and spend your time fiddling with the guitar or practicing playing it. If you're interested to find out how to identify a quality instrument or identify issues within your own instrument that you can then fix and improve, then this is the video you want to check out next. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you found this video helpful or entertaining, please leave a like and consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.